using a Bible. The verses again are Matthew chapter 13, verses 44 to, I think, 50 or so. So, Jesus said to his disciples, "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure buried in a field, which a person finds and hides again, and out of joy goes and sells all that he has and buys that field." We'll deal with the other parts of the gospel in a few minutes. So, this short little parable and the next one, which I guess I'll read now so that we can use both for what I'm about to talk about. "Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant searching for fine pearls. When he finds a pearl of great price, he goes and sells all that he has and buys it." As often happens in conversation these days, we seem to get off the track very easily. Someone, especially when it comes to politics and religion, somebody may make what they consider a very innocent statement, and they say, well, just look at what the Democrats do, look at what the Republicans do, or look at what this, and we get off the track and say, why can't we focus on what a topic that anybody brings up and listen to each other and see what we can do with that given topic rather than throw sand in the air? And so it is with these two parables. We can say, wait a minute, this guy found a treasure in the field. What makes he think he's got a right to it? Or, well, didn't he check with anybody? Did he bother to see whether he could find who put that treasure there? So those are all ways of throwing sand up in the air in terms of what Jesus is talking about. So even in this sense, these parables are so wonderful for us today. And so the same thing with the pearl of great price. We might say, what a bonehead. He sells everything he has and buys this one pearl. Now what? What's he going to live on? That was kind of foolish. Again, sand in the air, sand in people's face. Because what Jesus wants us to think about is, what is of greatest value to us? And what are we willing to sacrifice, to give up, in order to have what is of greatest value? And hopefully, we can reflect and see that the greatest value we have is what God has blessed us with. And this again reminds us of chapter 3 of Genesis, where Adam and Eve were not satisfied with what God had provided them, so they needed to reach out for that proverbial chocolate or apple, and as if that was the way that they felt they could have more. Why not? Instead of being grateful for the life we have, despite maybe all its difficulties and struggles and conflicts and whatever else. And of course, our treasure, where do we find the treasure? This particular treasure in this parable is hidden in the ground. Well, can we imagine the treasure that God has blessed us with is immersed in the depths of our being? And so, again, we don't have to reach out, we don't have to go anywhere except inside to find that treasure that has been invested in the fibers of our being. And the pearl is obviously something that we can admire. And so all of God's wonderful, beautiful creation that we can admire, and admire again as a gift that God has entrusted to us to take care of. And so we pray that we might, as we reflect on the treasure within as well as the great beauty of creation, that we would do our best to take care of both, that we self-care, which some people may find selfish, but self-care is very important. It's one way of saying thank you to God for the treasure that we are. And we pray, of course, that when we look at each other, we can see each other as a treasure. And that in our interactions as a faith community, we can share with each other how we view the treasure within, how we've come to know that treasure, and how we continue on an ongoing basis to discover the richness of that treasure that's buried within. Or we can share with one another how we go about admiring creation, reflecting on it, and seeing how blessed we are by God's generosity and goodness and immense creativity. And so how do we put the two together so that we can use our inner resources to bring about beauty, both within ourselves and in the world in which we live? That beauty would start with our making connections by which we can truly affirm each other, support each other, and when it comes to perhaps advising each other, that we can do that in gentle, loving, caring ways. That we can say something like, well, I have a slightly different view on that. Are you interested in hearing it? And some people would find it difficult, I think, to say yes, because, we seem to be getting so set in our ways about, again, religion, politics, so many other facets of our lives. And one of the other things to focus on in terms of the treasure is the joy that this individual felt in finding that treasure. So what Jesus is inviting us to do is to get beyond the literal. That we're not talking necessarily about a treasure in a field. We're talking about that which brings us true joy. And the only source of true joy for us is the love of God, God's presence.